This is now a pedal wrench, and not only does this handle your traction pins, but the same 2mm Allen wrench works for your grease port plug.
Okay.
So, being as that's a small, tiny piece that you might drop and never find again, we give you a socket to stow that.
Cool.
And, in case you do drop it anyhow, there's a spare Loctited into each of your pedals anyhow.
Cool.
So, you then take your grease gun, put it into here, pump grease in. It'll fill the bearings from the inside and eventually come out here and here. Or, if you want to take them apart, same wrench goes back in the same hole. You'll see some knurling on the outside of the bearing shield here. We grab that with one hand, turn this a quarter turn like we're tightening, and that unlocks the mechanism. It now spins apart with one finger. We spin that off, and now you can see the wedge and the cone-shaped hole with 4 slots in there. As the wedge goes into there, it expands the slots outward and locks that in place. Also, I don't know if we can see through there, but this bolt is drilled the whole way through. And also the threaded portion of it is about 1 millimeter shorter than the slots on here. So when grease goes in, it can go through the bolt or it can hit the bolt and go around it.
It just pops out.
The grease goes into there and then comes out through the internal grease port on both sides there. You will see the red rubber seal on the bearing. See that on the other side as well. So there's 2 bearings there. The inboard seal has been removed from both bearings.
Okay.
So the grease can flow into the back side of the bearing. It eventually flexes the seal outward. There is, if we can see it here, a small bearing shoulder built into the bearing shield, as well as built into this bearing shield. And there is a bearing shoulder for the outer race of the bearing machined into the back side of the bearing cup.
Okay.
So, that lets grease flow behind the bearing, and then once this flexes outward, this 10/1000ths of an inch thick shoulder holds the face of the bearing shield off of the face of the bearing. You'll see a couple of stair steps here on the edge, as well as machined into the edge of the bearing shield. That means that dirt has to go in 1 millimeter, over 1 millimeter, in another millimeter, over another millimeter, and then in 5 more millimeters just to get to the lip
Seal.
on the seal.
Nice.
On the back side, it's a little bit different. We couldn't do the stair steps like that, but we do have the bearing protruding out of the crank arm about 2.5 millimeters. So dirt has to go in 1 millimeter, over 2.5 millimeters, and then in 5 millimeters to get to the seal.
So how often a year would you be rebuilding these, or not rebuilding them, but flushing the grease out?
You don't rebuild them. You simply take that grease port plug out and pump grease through. Normally we wouldn't take them apart like this. That was only to show you the inner workings.
But in Sedona, how often would you do it?
3 times a year is probably good for most hardcore riders around here. And generally what I tell people is every 10 times that you re-lube your chain to do it, and then figure people won't do it that often. But
Yeah. That's how it usually goes, eh? Now what about this crank here?
Okay, well, let me show you another thing here. So, putting this back together, we've got that can move in and out the bearings, so we make sure it's in tight. Finger on the knurling, spin that till it just won't spin anymore and your finger slips. Your bearing tension is now set. You grab the knurling, turn that locking wedge till we get a little bit of spring happening in there, and voila, she's locked in place.
Wow. Nice.
And then of course the grease port plug back into there.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Your traction pins go the whole way through. So one 12mm traction pin gives you 3 millimeters of extension on the bottom and 5 on the top. Going to 4 1/3, 3 2/3, and down to 3. So these ramp up at an angle to simulate what you'd have of that wall in front of your foot when you have a concave pedal surface.
Beautiful. How long have you been running these pedals here, like this set on this bike personally?
This set, not real long. I just built this bike up.
Yeah.
But my other set has been running for over 1.5 years before I just built this one up.
Wow. Those are fantastic. And then this crank arm is specially machined out to fit this assembly in on both sides.
Yep. Yep. So once again, let's pull this apart, and you can see the bearings in here.
That's just so easy to get apart.
Uh-huh. So this is a 17 by 30 bearing.
Okay.
And this is a 15 by 28. So they're super burly. They're burly enough we give a 3-year warranty on the bearings. We give a 5-year warranty on the pedal body, bearing shaft, all the other hardware except for traction pins. Traction pins have no warranty, but they're available at local hardware stores everywhere.
Okay.
FSA does a 2-year warranty on the cranks and the bottom bracket. But we extend that to a 5-year warranty on the modification of the end.
I gotcha.
However, any warranty of the crank is handled directly through us rather than FSA.
Okay.
If you sent a bent crank arm to FSA, they'd send you a standard one back that wouldn't fit your pedal.
Gotcha.
So, you have a problem, you send it to us. We send you the new one. We deal with FSA for the warranty on the old one. So you never have to deal with more than one company on it.
So let's say I wanted to get a set of these. How would I do that?
You'd call me at 928-399-9669.
Cool.
And you'd read me a credit card number over the phone, or we can do PayPal, or you can send a check or money order. If it's not a certified thing like a money order, there'd be a little time delay while we wait for it to clear the bank and make sure we're not getting scammed.
Yeah.
Wow, it took a good impact yesterday. Look at that.
Uh-huh.
I heard that one yesterday. Like, ka-whack! Like, okay, that's doing damage. Sure enough, it did.
Thanks for showing us that, Dean. That's great. Fantastic. So there, Vic.
So try and get in line right here, so you'll be able to see the crank arm flexing in. And of course, the whole thing's going to go down, so I'm going to compress the suspension some.